And we're alive. Nice to meet you, Mr. Jim Krueger.
Nice to meet you. So happy to be here. I love France.
Yeah, no, you were telling me before, and no, that it's nice that you have a good experience here. Because sometimes people have a bad Americans have a bad opinion of French people because they only know Paris, and sometimes in Paris people are kind of, I don't know. It could be rude or not very. I don't know.
Oh
It's
no.
different. But
Well,
when you go outside from Paris, people are really nice.
we had a great time, and I was there with my wife, and my wife does voiceover for a living, so she was really interested in learning the language and the pronunciation and that sort of thing. And the French people were so kind and so nice. I think the problem is like when Americans get there and expect the French to speak English. Like,
Yes.
don't go to another culture and then expect them to speak yours. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, there's everything. No, but in Paris, people can be really rude sometimes. So it could happen too. It happened that for me, there are some friends that have bad experience in Paris, but especially with service. You know, if you go to the center of Paris and you want to order a coffee, but you go like in the we call it tourist trap.
Right?
Like uh, it was okay. What do you want? I want a coffee. Okay. What else? It's like they don't give a fuck,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
don't expect a tip like in the United States. You know?
Right. That's so interesting. That was
Yeah,
so.
because in United States, people are, oh yeah, nice to meet you. Want more water because they are working that tip. Here, people don't give tip; they don't receive. It's part of their salary.
Yep.
So
This is amazing.
yeah, so yeah, sometimes people can act more natural.
No, I had a great time in France. Great
Oh,
time.
that's great. But for the people that, because my audience is very broad, people that don't know you, maybe I can introduce you a little, or
Sure.
you can
Please.
introduce yourself. I don't know
Oh,
how
you
you
want me to
prefer.
introduce yourself? Sure. I'm Jim Krueger. I'm a writer. I work primarily in comic books, but I'm working on a film right now that is
Cool.
something I've been working towards for a long, long time. Um, Not superhero, not based on a graphic novel, just a true life story. Um,
That's
Anyhow,
cool too.
I'm best known probably for Marvel with the Earth X trilogy, which was Earth X, Universe X, and Paradise X. Oh, and there's the
But
Captain
what?
America of it.
Oh, it was this shield.
I wish I had my statue of Cap. I'd lift mine up right here to hold it too.
Oh, I
Um,
just broke it. Great.
oh no,
No, it's okay.
yeah.
Sorry.
Well, it's probably a statement on America these days, so it's fine. But I'm known for the Earth X and Universe X and Paradise X. I've done lots of things for Marvel, including Avengers versus Invaders,
Mm.
Spider-Man one shots, a bunch of X-Men backup features, some other Avengers stuff, some other X-Men stuff. At DC, I'm best known for writing Justice, which Alex Ross painted over the pencils of Doug Braithwaite, which was an imagining or reimagining of almost the old Super Friends cartoon, but as a serious,
Yeah, a serious version,
yeah,
not with
battle
a
the
monkey.
Justice League and the Legion of Superheroes. No, well, we had Brainiac had the monkey, so the monkey was there, and then I do a lot of independent stuff from Foot Soldiers to the No Ones, which is probably my newest independent work, to Clockmaker, to Alphabet Soups and I've gotten to do lots of other various things like Buffy the Vampire Slayer comics, Micronauts, Star Wars. I even did one of the Matrix stories with Tim Sale.
That's amazing.
Yeah, in fact, I was the first guy. We could talk about this later, but like as far as European artists, I was the guy who brought them all to Marvel. I was the guy who went into the
Really?
office of Bob Harris and said, um, first of all, here's Alan Moore's Captain Britain. I made Xeroxes of everything. And I said, you have to read this. We have to publish this. You have to bring this in. And I introduced him to everyone from Alan Davis to Brian Hitch to Carlos Pacheco to
No.
Grant Morrison to,
What?
yeah,
No.
all these guys Marvel was completely unaware of. And I said, DC is going to have all these guys if we don't do something quick, because everything is going to be British and European, and that's where the great art is being done, and that's where the great writing is being done right
Wow,
now.
that's amazing. I didn't know that. But can you, especially how you pitch that? Because maybe I don't know, it they were open to the idea of include foreign artists, or they were kind of, no, we this is working. We don't want to, change. If it's not broken, don't change it.
Um, well, it was one of those things in which Marvel has always tried to expand. They've always wanted to go into different directions. They've always wanted to do things that were exciting, that people would respond to.
Mm.
Um, and that was a time in which they kind of had the same 5, 6 guys writing everything. It was like
Ah,
it was
right.
like the early to mid '90s, and it was after all the Image artists had, or all the artists had left for Image, and there was all this stuff, and
All right.
losing
Todd
Marvel.
McFarlane, Rob
Yeah,
Liefeld,
yeah.
Jim
So
Lee.
Marvel was losing their market share. That's why they bought a distributor to try to get some of that market share back. That's why they did all these things. And I was like,
Mm.
let's just do better books.
Yes. Yeah, that's another bad strategy. No, that's amazing. So, well, probably you told this 100 times, but can you share with us how you start in the comic
Oh,
book industry?
totally. I mean, I should start by saying that my dad got me into the comic book, or got me into comic books at a really young age. He was an auto mechanic, and he had a garage, and he would pick me up in his tow truck and take me on tow jobs to haul in broken down cars. And to thank me for coming along with him, he would buy me always a couple comics. It would be like Doctor Strange, it would be like Kirby Commandy, it would be, every once in a while a Spider-Man book or a Superman book. He always got my brother Batman and me Superman. That was a to me for a while. But he would do that. So I grew up loving it, and
Hmm.
I have a really close relationship with my dad and my mom. But especially growing up, I was really close to my dad. There's a sense of nostalgia to it. There's a sense of,
Hmm.
I can't look at comic books without memories of my childhood and my dad. And,
Sure.
hanging out, and we spent pretty much so every Saturday afternoon together, and every Saturday afternoon we would go to the comic shop, because comic shops were just beginning. And that was this unbelievable era, because it was like Byrne was drawing, he was just finishing up his run on Uncanny X-Men and starting Fantastic Four. It was Simonson Thor, it was Frank Miller Daredevil, it was
Wow.
Roger Stern and Marshall Rogers and Michael Golden and Paul Smith, Doctor Strange. It was all that stuff. It was like this rare period in which every comic book was great.
Yeah, and they were not especially for kids.
Yeah, not at all.
Yeah. No, yeah, what the stories were becoming more complex and more. Yeah, no, that's amazing. And your father was also a fan of comic books, or? they just give it to you like?
He would get them for me every once in a while. He would read them. You know, he would read one of the ones I had gotten, or we'd go to the comic shop and he'd pick up one to read. My dad was really into the Phantom. Like at a young age, he had me listen to all the old radio shows,
Classic.
like The Shadow and all that sort of thing. So I heard stories before I read them or saw them, and so all that kind of involved me as a storyteller. Um,
Mm.
but back to your question about how I got started. So he got me into it. I became really excited by it. I always had the collections I did. I was so into like Micronauts and that Bruce Jones Hazar, all that stuff when the comic shop started. And then I went into advertising. I was writing advertising in a couple places in the Midwest, Wisconsin, in the United States. And those jobs didn't last long. I was just learning at the beginning. And then finally, I did an ad campaign for myself to sell myself as an advertising writer to Marvel. And I sent them ads about myself. And like 3 months later, I was on my way to Marvel and writing ads for Marvel.
That's awesome. So what kind of ads for Marvel did you make? Like the one that you really have like kind of a huge success. That's genius, man.
Well, probably the biggest campaign I ever did for Marvel, I ever wrote for Marvel, was during the Marvel versus DC crossover. If you remember that one,
Oh yes,
the
yes,
Avengers
of course.
League One and all that kind of thing. Um, both companies agreed that they were going to have house ads in the books, and you know, I and the people I worked with, our entire team said, no, let's do a campaign so that the Marvel ads stand out even compared to the DC ads. And so we came up with this campaign that had the characters silhouetted against a white background with the type kind of bending around the character. And we did this whole thing about, you know, putting the character back in comics. It's the characters that make a difference, you know, all that.
Yes.
And so that
Mm.
was probably my most famous of all the campaigns. But, you know, like even when Grant Morrison and Steve Yowell put out Skrull Kill Crew at one point, you know, we would do a mini campaign in which like Steve had created a piece of artwork in which there was just a dead Skrull in a back alley. And I said, well, let's make it a 3-part campaign. So we had him add overlays to that so that from the first ad to the third ad, there were just more and more bodies of alien Skrulls
Oh, okay.
with
Oh,
Skrull Kill
that's awesome.
in the back. You know, and it was stuff like that. So I was doing that kind of thing, and I was meeting the editors and talking to the editors and trying to find ways to help them sell their books or bring interest to their books. And I remember, you know, along the way, Suzanne, it was Gaffney at the time, it's Beasley now. She worked in the X office, and she asked if I ever had any ideas for stories. And so I suggested one with Nightcrawler, which was a little like 8 or 10 page backup. And she had mentioned like all the usual artists, and I really wanted to kind of go in that area of the Matt Wagner, Teddy Christensen, Tim Sale route. And so I reached out to Tim Sale, and that became his first Marvel work.
Mm.
You know, I also brought Jeff Loeb into Marvel too.
Wow.
You know, because I was checking out everything, and I had a deal even with my boss where I was buying all kinds of different comics that I thought had quality to them. And so I was trying to bring in all these voices and all these artists that no one knew at Marvel. And bit by bit, from that on, I was able to do something else. You know, I was able to show kind of a different taste, and that taste, you know, became a good part of Marvel. I mean, what's
Mm.
also interesting was that my first job when I started working for Marvel was introducing this artist around because he had a new project coming out, and that was Alex Ross and the book Marvels. So
What?
I,
Is you who introduced Alacruz?
right. So my first job, I was at a
Wow.
Comic-Con representing Marvel, and Alex was there, and they were like, "Look, Jim, he really likes to talk comic books. Go talk with him, take him around, show his artwork to people. When you see retailers, show them some of the pieces that he's working on and let him talk to them." And so I walked to Alex, around this con and made introductions and showed off the work from Marvels. And along the way, we talked about our favorite characters. We talked about Kirby. We talked about Machine Man. We talked about and our love for Machine Man. And he talked about a costume his mom made for him that had the arms that would come out like Machine Man. And,
Really?
we just kind of became instant friends.
Wow. So it was a really cool fair experience. Fair.
It was just really great, and we had so many opportunities as the years progressed to talk on the phone, or I was a giant fan of 2000 AD, of course, and was already a junkie for Captain Britain, all the Alan Davis stuff that both Alan Moore and Jamie Delano drew, and I was even hunting down all the old Chris Claremont and Herb Trimpe stuff that had been released only in England. And so I was searching out all that stuff, and then I would get extra copies and send them to Alex. And so it was more like we just became friends who loved the same kind of comics together.
So you were always trying to look for something different,
right?
Like
Always
thinking outside the box, try and find new. Yeah. No, that's great. That's awesome. So you were a fan of Judge Dredd, for example?
Right, Judge Dredd. And while I love Judge Dredd, I love Judge Anderson more. I like Judge Anderson so much.
Yeah. No, I think recently on my show I had Alan Grant. You know?
Amazing. Yeah, amazing. I've never met him, but he's incredible.
Yeah, no, he's kind of same as you. He always tried to think outside the box, and yeah, he worked on the early Judge Dredd, and then he made a huge run with Batman.
Oh yeah,
and
Batman especially on those issues that were drawn by Norm Brayfogle, unbelievable.
Yeah, and also Lobo.
Yeah,
I was saying if DC will be smart enough, Lobo can become his Deadpool. Because it's really
yeah.
Because Lobo now doesn't happen that much. I don't know. It's not really relevant. But at one point, when it was with Alan Grant and Simon Bisley, was
oh my gosh, it was giant. And I think Keith Giffen involved on those two with Lobo to a degree. I know Keith was involved in Lobo's creation in Omega Men.
Yeah. No, but I think that could be a great idea. Try to make a relevant this character again and make it like a counterpart to Deadpool, because people like that. When they break their wall and
right. It makes me think that other he never became popular, but it makes me think of Keith Giffen's The Heckler. Remember his superpower was the ability to throw insults at his enemies.
No, I never knew that. That's so amazing.
It was only 6 issues long, but that character and that costume was pretty great.
And talking a little bit about your career, how it came the idea of make this Heart X?
It started, well, it was after Kingdom Come had come out, and Alex and I talked about
I was thinking something similar.
Right. Well, what happened is Wizard Magazine approached Alex and they said they wanted to know how the future Marvel characters, like what would the Marvel characters look in the future, and they wanted Alex to do like sketches like he did for Kingdom Come. And so Alex decided to do that article. But Alex just had the art, not the words. And I had been writing these alternate histories of Marvel heroes that Alex really loved in the magazine Marvel Vision. And so Alex said, "Hey, we can finally work together. Why don't you do what you do? Write that little paragraph for each of these characters." And so I did that, and then Alex loved it so much, and Marvel loved it, and the president of Marvel loved it. They wanted a real story. But then Alex said to me, "You know what? I don't have a story. I don't have the story of what this is supposed to be." And I remember there was one night where I called and left maybe an hour-long rant on his machine, talking about how everything's biological and it's the Earth as egg, it's the mutated superheroes and stuff like that as antibodies fighting from foreign attack and protecting it, and all these things. And it was this rant where I just kept on going about all the biological things, and and thinking of Earth as the classic Mother Earth, and the egg, and vibranium as a sort of placenta, and really breaking down the process of birth and all the various things that Marvel could be. And so what happens is the Watcher, even in the midst of that, was kind of keeping an eye on things. And this is why the Watchers exist, to watch the new Celestials. And what happened in the midst of it is Marvel was going through a bankruptcy, because this was right around the year 1999, 2000. Their books were not selling well, but Earth X was selling great. Like, we were in the top 10 books every month it came out. And it was, I should mention again that Alex did the covers and the designs, and he was really a producer. I would send him the scripts, and he would read them before they even went to Marvel. And then the amazing artist John Paul Leon drew every single issue.
So the design of the characters, like for example Captain America, like with the flag, was all Alec Ross?
Yeah, that was Alex. He figured out the designs for all the characters. I think the only character I think I had some sort of say in two characters. The Daredevil character, he originally just had the pentagram on the chest, and I said, well, take this one point off, because then you have two D's forming a pentagram, and the last point is implied, but there's a DD there that then is established. And with Machine Man, I suggested that
oh, that's amazing. The
transparent.
It's amazing the ability you had to reimagine the whole Marvel universe in a different way, and they let you do it.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I mentioned my dad before. There was a guy on the radio named Paul Harvey, and Paul Harvey would always tell almost the secret origins of historical figures. He would tell a story. Like, for example, one of the ones that really sits in my head is he tells a story of a little boy who goes into the backyard, and there's a small nest there, and there's a baby owl that was just hatched or had just gotten its feathers. And the way the story goes is the little boy reaches into the nest and he takes the baby owl out, and then the baby owl starts screeching and freaking out and pecking the boy in the hand. So the boy, frightened and scared, drops the baby owl and stomps it to death. This sad thing. And the boy was so sad and so traumatized by this. And the way Paul Harvey would tell the stories, he said the boy was so affected and felt so guilty that he spent the rest of his life giving voices to animals and giving life to creatures on the page and stuff like that. And the reveal at the end was that this is something that happened to Walt Disney when Walt Disney was a very young boy.
No.
These stories with this
Wow.
reveal at the end, and he would every week there'd be a different historical thing. So I loved the idea that there were famous, and I applied this to the Marvel universe, that there are all these characters, but there's something we don't know. There's an
Yeah, like a secret life, like a secret.
Right.
That
When I saw Alex's amazing designs, and I was writing this, and we were talking about why everyone on Earth would be mutated. Was it that everyone had become X-Men? Why would that be? And all that kind of thing. And I came up with this idea because of this idea that Earth heroes were antibodies. They were known fighters, really, on a cosmic scale. All of a sudden, that new piece of information affected every single other origin, and so there was an application of this small hidden idea, or this hidden idea, to each one of their origins, and that became interesting and fun.
Yeah, that's important. Find something interesting and fun. Yeah, that's for me the secret to sell comics. So the response was huge. I think at the time, I remember when it was released, was like,
yeah, it was. I mean, my wife meets people and they're like, "Your husband wrote Earth X." They don't.
Yes.
Like, people are excited about Justice, and Justice certainly is maybe more famous, or sold more comics. Maybe I don't know, but there was something about Earth X that satisfied a desire for fans to see maybe all the MacGuffins or all the plot points of years of 30 years of Marvel continuity all tied together.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that what we were saying, like, we can see that you really think outside the box,
Right.
And
by the way, I'll move over here. One of my prize collections is I have all the Marvel Masterworks.
Really?
Yeah, all of them. They're almost at 300 volumes, and I've just been getting them all from the beginning.
Wow. Can you show one for the?
Oh, yeah. Sure. Well, here's Kirby's really famous,
Oh, right.
on the cover, but you'll usually get, like, I don't know, 12 to 15 issues in it, and so these stories, go back and they tell, like, all the Marvel history, all the Marvel lore and stuff like that, and so
Yeah, no,
I've
that's
definitely
cool.
been aware of that history and that kind of thing, and I think, if the Marvel universe, not that we didn't touch on monsters and the earlier, 1940s stuff, even in Earth X and prior to that, if the Marvel universe is really 1961 to maybe 1991, before continuity became less of a important thing, and all that kind of thing, that's really the era that Earth X, Universe X, Paradise X, Marvel's X, that's the era we live in.
Yeah, for sure. So, well, I guess you did more work for Marvel than DC, but you like you were saying, you start as a fan of Superman. So that was kind of your favorite character during your.
No, not at all. When I was a child, when I was a child, my dad got my brother Batman and me Superman, and as I said before, I was so disappointed. I was so frustrated because Batman instantly looks cool. Batman instantly has all this drama and all this sadness and all this darkness, and
way more complex, I think.
right. Superman is a baby when he reaches Earth. He's raised by really nice Methodists in a cornfield.
Yes.
And so there's a trick, or there's a problem of Superman, because how do you make him suffer? And the idea of kryptonite and Lois Lane, that's really not
Yeah.
as dark or as deep. So when I was on the Kevin Smith show, we talked about that one Superman
Yeah,
issue.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
You write a very cool story, I
yeah,
think.
thanks. So the story was, and it was here. I'll show it to you. It was in
Yes.
Adventures of Superman number 11. I know it was part of the DC Online thing too. And Drew Edwards Neil Edwards. I'm sorry, Neil Edwards, another European
What did
artist.
what
Um,
did what did it say in the balloon?
oh, it says, "Please, Superman, you have to kill me." And
You
clearly,
don't know.
Alien Green Lantern.
Yes.
And the basic idea for the story is that it opens in this, like, if there's a place in space where people go to get lost, there's a Green Lantern there, and he's depressed and he's sad and he's broken, and he never wants to be called upon again, and he meets someone there who tells him of Superman and tells him of the last Kryptonian that still lives, and he gets all excited. Green Lantern can't believe it, and he uses the ring to track himself back to Earth. The ring takes him back to Earth, and as he enters our atmosphere, he's already heard about Superman's hearing, so he's already speaking to Superman, knowing that Superman will hear him, and he says, Superman, there's someone I want you to kill. This is a murderer who's killed billions of people. And he lands in Metropolis, and Superman arrives and says, I don't kill. And the Green Lantern says, but if you knew what this person did, you would kill them. And Superman's like, that's not my way. And then the Green Lantern like falls to his knees and says, please, in the name of truth, in the name of justice, in the name of mercy, all Superman's, kind of tag words, you please kill me. And Superman's like, I don't understand. And the Green Lantern says, it was me. I was the Green Lantern in charge of protecting Krypton, and I failed. All your people are dead because of me.
Oh, fuck.
Please ease my suffering. Ease my pain.
Wow.
And then Superman won't. Superman's still like trying to help.
Yeah. That,
And
that, that,
the ring, won't let Superman kill him. Like, he's like, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to put some effort in this. The ring is gonna defend me. And Superman won't do it. And then the Green Lantern starts attacking people
wow.
for Superman to take him on.
That's really outside the box.
The story goes on from there. But
No, but that's great. I love when you can pick a character that you, well, actually you don't modify the character. You just bring in a scenario that you can never imagine. That's great. But I love when there are stories like that put the character that everyone knows in a kind of a puzzle, like when the Punisher forced to Daredevil to shoot him.
right.
I don't know. I love that comic, and then he shoots him, but there's no any bullet. I say, yeah, I'm right.
I loved it. And Frank Miller's Daredevil was one of my favorite things ever.
Yeah. So, well, we talk about the big ones, but I know you do a lot of you work with other companies too.
Right.
That
I do. I mean, I've gotten to do a lot of work with Dark Horse. My first comic book project ever out there was the Foot Soldiers, which started with Dark Horse, and that's about a team of 3 teenagers who go to the graveyard where all the superheroes are buried, and they rob the graves. That's how they get their powers. They kill the of the original heroes, and then everything starts going wrong from there. And they inadvertently cause villains to be created, and it's almost like, and it's a story of change. So change causes destruction. There's destruction
Mm.
that comes with change before things get rebuilt.
And
So
when you work with companies like that, they give you more freedom, more
um,
creative freedom.
yes, I mean, it really depends on the characters. I mean, if they're characters I created, or I'm built, or I know deep down, then they do. But there's also a sense of, if they're characters that they're in charge of, then there are rules to follow. Like
Mm.
also at Dark Horse, I did a Firefly comic with Joss Whedon, and I did one of the issues of Buffy with Joss Whedon.
How was to write for Buffy?
That was
I
lots of fun. I love the show. I've always watched the show. So I knew the voice of the characters. I knew kind of how it was supposed to go, and because I love to grab little obscure pieces of information that it's almost like Easter eggs that I get to
mm,
remind people of. Um, I
certain
put
episodes.
stuff in there. I put that stuff in there, and so fans of Buffy, you know, were really excited by that. And I always try to write in such a way that I don't want anyone to feel like they're being excluded from the project.
Mm,
I try to explain enough so that no one feels like they can't enjoy a project or a story just coming in out of the cold. But at the same time, I always try to put little nods to things that are rewards for longtime fans or readers.
and the story you wrote was like, well, of course, in the same universe, but what was the different to the show, or was like the continuity of the show?
So Buffy, there were 7 seasons, and then in season 8, and then some of the later seasons, but season 8, Joss himself was overseeing um, that season in the comics, working with Dark Horse, and so
Ah, okay.
um, where it was Giles and Faith dealing with a town that didn't fear vampires because they all stayed away from it. And why was it? And there was a deep, terrible secret about the town and all
Mm.
that.
Well, that's cool. And for what company you work that you wrote something for The Matrix?
Right. There was another company that was doing a graphic novel, and I think they just did a big, beautiful hardcover collecting all the stories. But they had people come in and write 10-page Matrix stories, and like everyone like had stories in there. It was really like a who's who of the comic industry, and
Wow.
I got to work with Tim Sale again, which was amazing.
Oh, that's great. And you were a fan of the franchise?
Of Matrix,
Hmm?
yeah, especially the first one, especially the first one.
Yeah.
The entire storyline works, but the movies left out something that you could only get from the animated Matrix, the the animatrix that,
Yeah, the
like,
Animatrix. I love the.
yeah, I did too, but they had that interesting point that once AI was created, we made them slaves, and we were cruel to AI and mean to AI, which is why they rebelled. And so it almost set up that Neo was there to bring peace to both sides and bring bring some sort of balance to the fact that this new life form
Yeah.
had a place in our world. But what had happened, and that whole enslavement and rebellion and stuff like that, was never dealt with in the movies. And so that
Mm.
it the second and third movie never felt as full or as right as they needed to be,
Mm.
because the only way to know that piece of the story was to watch the animated stuff. And I just don't think everyone who watched the movies watched the animated stuff.
Yes. No, but that's great. I think there's a lot of stories you can tell. And what was your story in particular?
I did a story about about an escape artist who
Mm.
was, and a reporter is trying to understand this escape artist and learns about this word called the Matrix, and notices that there are a couple of the Mr. Smith type men in black who are tracking him down and trying to see him. And at the end of the show, the final show, he disappears completely. And it
Wow.
ends with the reporter wondering where this guy went. And he said, all I have is a clue. All I have is a word to follow. What is the Matrix?
Mm.
And because of my love for, characters and historical kind of mythological characters like Houdini and stuff like that, this definitely had a sense of Houdini to it.
Wow. Yeah, those characters are great because yeah, of course there are tricks, but there was certain mysticism that that's that's
Right.
awesome. So you also wrote a very cool comic, The No Ones.
Right. The No Ones. And The No Ones is one of my more recent projects. In the last year, or the last 2 years, I wrote two major projects. One was Marvel's X, which was the prequel to Earth X, but The No Ones is all new characters. It's about a team of celebrity superheroes. If you think of things like Rob Liefeld's Youngblood, or you think about even the Fantastic Four back in the day, or you think of, well, the Boys, probably not, because that's so mean. But they're these celebrities, and they have their own action figures and their own headquarters and their own clothing line and all this stuff.
So it's like The Boys with mixed with the New Mutants a little.
They're like, these are the most popular celebrities in the world, and they save the world. So they're like, we love these characters. We want to dress like these characters. We have their figures. We have their clothing. They have corporate sponsorship. All this sort of thing.
They're like super influencers.
Right. Totally. And one day they're fighting terrorists, and they accidentally kill an innocent bystander. And they know that the media is coming. They know that the cameras are coming, and they're like, oh my gosh, if this gets filmed, we're going to lose so much money. We're going to lose so much of, our celebrity. This is a bad thing. They're going to dig into our lives and blah, 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 blah. So they hide the body from the cameras and they bury it secretly. And then they all go back to their respective lives. And then the next day they wake up and no one's ever heard of them. No one's ever.
So it's like something happened that make
right.
people...
It's like a curse. There's like a curse upon them. And no matter what they do, they can introduce them. Like there's even people who say, hey, why are you dressed like that? And they're like, well, we're superheroes. We fight crime. We save people. And then 30 seconds later, that person will look at them and say, why are you dressed like that? So it's perpetual. They can't even restart their
it's like short-term memory.
Right. And so no matter what happens, they're going through this. And what this does is it splits the team in half. Half the team sees this as a chance to really change the world. They can really influence the world in ways that no one would ever guess, because everyone would forget it immediately after they did it, while the other half of the team just wants their lives back. And it creates this conflict between these teammates. And it's a conflict that no one will be able to remember, even if we get a slight glance of it.
How many episodes you made?
Only 6 issues. It was only 6 issues, and it was just put out as a trade paperback.
Okay. So there's no... You don't have more ideas to keep going with the...
I do. That was the first miniseries. Now they're selling it as a trade paperback. Hopefully we will do another 6 issues or another storyline.
No, this...
I played with those characters, and each of the characters are really exciting and fun.
Oh, that's cool. So I wonder where you get your inspiration to really have these ideas outside the box.
Um, well, I mean, some of it just goes from having read a lot of stuff, and not just comic books.
Yeah,
I
of course.
and there are also rules. Stan Lee talks about what if. He talks about how he would look like he'd look at Spider-Man and he'd be like, oh, what if Spider-Man got a cold? How would that affect him fighting Dr. Octopus or
Mm,
Green Goblin or something like that? And I, while that's a great way to look at it, I always ask the question, what's the consequence of doing the right thing? What's the bad thing that results to try to balance the good thing that a hero does? Or what's the hero's greatest fear? What's the thing that they wish won't happen? Or what would be the destiny of a hero? What could be something? What would be something like when you think of um, a story's beginning? Where would that character go? What's along that path? Like when Jason Aaron did Wolverine and the X-Men, that
mm.
run on books of the books where Wolverine is now a teacher. I was both so excited to read that run and then kind of frustrated because I was like, no, Wolverine's destiny is that he should be a teacher. That's kind of the end point of his story. That's where
Mm.
he starts at the beginning as the one who has to be taught, as the crazy, almost animal, and ultimately he becomes the professor.
Mm. So you have some famous writer. It doesn't have to be just comic books. Writers in general.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up again, and this is probably my parents' influence, but they had me read all the classics. So it was always Jules Verne and H.G. Wells, and
Mm.
it was Dickens, and it was Quain, and it was even Shakespeare, though that didn't come from my parents. I just took a lot of British lit classes even in high school.
Mm. Yeah, I last year I had the chance to visit. It's a museum that is the home was the home of Jules Verne,
Oh, cool.
and was really cool. He was fascinated with the sea. So his room is really little. It's like a room in a like the room like really inside a boat. Even
Yeah.
with the windows round.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like he that was his inspiration, and no, was he was fascinated with the world, with the different cultures, and yeah, no, it was really cool,
Yeah.
and
Oh, I was going to say one of the other things that really influenced me as far as answering your question of where I get my ideas or what's my approach
yes,
is I was given advice by this writer director years ago that stuck with me all the time, and it was the best advice. He said, anytime you're telling anything, whether it's a sequel to a film or the next episode of a TV show or the next issue of a comic or the next storyline of a comic series, he said, two things have to happen. He said, first, you need to advance the story. There needs to be something new. There needs to be something so that people feel like they got their money's worth. Their time was valuable. But he said the second thing that you have to do, and this was so valuable and so helpful, he said you need to remind people why they love this character or this story in the first place.
mm,
And from that, it even became a way to judge things like
sure,
when I see a third or a fourth movie and it doesn't remind me why I love this in the first place, I'm like, yeah, you guys left. You went too far from it.
yes, you go too outside the box. It's
Right. I think like sometimes the conflict, it's like you have to be out of you have to go outside the box, but at the same time you have to love the box.
yes, yeah, no, that's awesome. So, well, I know you're a busy guy, so um, we did almost almost 1 hour. So I don't know if you want to keep going or that's
Well, let me
that's
just mention too that Marvel's X just came out, which is the prequel to
yes, please.
and this was six. It was 6 issues long. It was awesome to go back. It takes place, maybe 5 years before the events of Earth X, and it's the story of a boy who's the only kid on Earth who hasn't mutated. He's lost his parents. He's lost everyone that he's cared for, and so he goes on a trek. He goes on a quest to New York City to meet his heroes. And of course, it's a story about, how hard it is to meet your heroes, how hard it is to deal with things. But it was so much fun to write. Alex, of course, did all the designs again and the cover. And, Alex and I talked about the kind of basic plan of the series beforehand. Alex is this great story guy himself, and then Welby Velibor, he was my artist on No Ones, and that was like one of his first really major U.S. books. And so now he's on, and so I showed his stuff to Alex, and he had a sensibility that's similar to John Paul Leon, so he fit in with that while being his own artist. So he fit in perfectly with that Earth X mentality of a dark world, and this was a chance to write the characters. Some of the things that were really fun is I finally got to write Daredevil. I've been wanting to write Daredevil forever, and I've had so many ideas of what I wanted to do with Daredevil, and I could only get a couple of them in here, but I loved it. I was so happy with it. And his friendship with Spider-Man is really kind of central to this story, as well as how the two of them adopt this kid into New York and bring him there, and how all the other heroes get involved because they see this kid as maybe having the answer to curing mankind. And what's really interesting is I wrote all this before the pandemic, but there are so many things that this touches upon that were kind of fulfilled by the lifestyle we're all dealing with right now. That like people were people would call me Jim or Mr. Krueger or whatever. Now they were calling me Prophet. It was ridiculous, but it was really, like there are moments where the kid is looking for food, so he goes into a grocery store and we realize that there are now dangers in grocery stores. Just even something like shopping is a dangerous thing.
Yeah, it's dangerous activity these days. No, that's right.
I definitely recommend that, especially if someone's into Earth X. It has some big surprises. One of the things that was interesting was to try to write this in such a way that it would not give away or damage any of the reveals in Earth X. Like some of the fun of Earth X is the discovery of how the heroes became what they are in Earth X, and kind of learning the backstory along the way and figuring that out. So I didn't want to wreck any of those things, even though there are some major reveals in here and some major points in here that are really exciting.
And how is Marvel who proposed you to do this, or was you who pitched them the idea?
A little bit of both. There was an anniversary of Marvel's coming up, and they wanted to kind of do a special thing with Alex and Kurt Busiek's work, and they were like, how do we make this an umbrella project? How do we make this something that has a number of different possibilities in it? And Alex said, by the way, Jim and I also have a prequel to Earth X that we would like to do. And they were like, done.
Oh, that was an easy sell.
It was a very easy sell, and it came out at the same time all this other Alex Ross stuff was coming out.
Yeah, I saw what he did for Marvel, the wall.
Right. Oh, that wall is amazing.
Yeah.
I was in the Marvel offices and I got to see it, and it was unbelievable.
Yeah. No, his technique is really unique, I think.
No. Well, I mean, when you go way back, Alex was so influenced by that first Superman movie, the Christopher Reeve one. Uh,
Really?
yeah, so influenced by it, like it almost became this desire for him to make heroes seem real.
Hmm.
His
Well.
whole approach is, what's the reality? It's like, and he applies that, not just like the little wrinkles you would see in a costume,
Hmm.
or having true human proportions. He applies that even to a logic of, story wise, of, they would have to deal with this, they would have to deal with this. Last night we were just talking about how Jack Kirby and Stan Lee were the first guys to really talk about PTSD, with Captain America always waking up
Hmm.
from nightmares of the loss of Bucky.
Yes.
And you don't think about that happening in 61, 62, 63.
Yes, you're
But they're
right.
doing it. So, kudos to both Stan and Jack.
Yeah. No, for sure they were kind of visionaries at that time. So, well, I really thank you for your time. It's really cool. Know a little bit more about your career, your awesome work,
Oh, thank
and
you so much. And oh, if people want to follow me, I'm on Instagram.
yes, please.
Yeah.
Is I'm Jim Krueger.
So it's IMJIMKRUEGER.
Yes. Oh, I think I can do better. Uh, tu- 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 mm, 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 mm.
So
An upcoming project that you have or
uh,
not
I
is
don't know.
confidential.
I don't know if any of them can be announced. And right now, I'm working on this movie I mentioned, which is a true life story. But it's pretty epic, so I'm very excited to write this story. And there was a time when I was living in New York City, and right in Times Square, and I was living in John Wayne's old apartment. And while I was there, I met someone else in this building. And when he told me the story, I said, that's an amazing story. Um, if I can ever set it up with a producer or a publisher, no, or I'm sorry, a producer, and write the movie, would you let me do it? And I think this individual thought that I was kidding, and I wasn't. So no, we're now working together, and I just turned in my outline. I expect to start the script, if not
Oh, that's great.
for the next. So,
That's great news. Well, if
by the
people
way,
want,
as you see there, I've been talking about Captain Britain was one of my biggest influences in wanting to be a writer, and Doctor Who. Doctor Who was another giant influence on me.
that's Captain Britain.
Yep, and that's
Mm,
the stuff that Alan Moore did with Alan Davis.
that's great.
It's just so good. I can't recommend enough.
Well, Jim, I really thank you. Well, I invite people to follow Jim Krueger on Instagram, and well, they can find your work everywhere, Amazon or comic book shop. Go to a comic book shop
For
and
sure, we want
support.
comic shops to succeed and grow and do well.
Yes. So I really thank you for your time,
Yep.
and bah, merci beaucoup. Maybe to until next time.
My pronunciation would be so bad for me to say it. I would have to bring my wife on, because when we were, she was like trying to speak the language within 2-3 days. Like, we were there for a couple weeks, and by the end, she was more popular than I was. She was the famous one. Everyone was like, "Wow, she loves our culture so much. She doesn't even want to speak English." So we can't wait to come back.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I hope after all this time is over, we can maybe meet in person one day.
That would be so good. I would love that.
Okay, Jim. Thank you
Awesome.
very much.
So much. Bye
Bye.
bye.